Good afternoon. I'm Patricia Hickson, the Emily Hall-Tremaine Curator of Contemporary Art here at the Wadsworth Atheneum, and it's my pleasure to introduce Todd Gray. Todd Gray is the featured artist of Matrix 186, which opened last Friday at the museum and will be on view through July 18th. But I'd like to take a moment to mention another contemporary art project that's coming up in late May, actually a two-part art project with sculptor Leonardo Drew, who grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and is now based in New York. In the summer and fall of 2019, Drew's public interactive sculpture, City in the Grass, was presented in Madison Square Park in New York. It received very high praise and much enjoyment. A re-envisioning of this particular sculpture will be on view in the central open-air courtyard of the Wadsworth. And a second monumental site-specific installation by Drew, what the artist calls an explosion, will be presented in the main entrance lobby of the museum, reaching up several stories. It's very exciting. But back to Todd Gray, who is our main event. I first came to know Todd's work more than 20 years ago. I included his work in my master's thesis. I've followed his work for some time, but more recently, his new photographic assemblages were so different and exciting, a real breakthrough in his work, that I thought he would make a great matrix artist. Todd layers and stacks photographs of Africa, Europe, and the cosmos to initiate a complex narrative about colonialism, slavery, and the diaspora. The exhibition features Todd's most ambitious assemblage to date, a 30-foot long, 14-part piece titled Sumptuous Memories of Plundering Kings, which was made specifically for this exhibition. Interestingly, only because of the pandemic, Todd's show was moved on the calendar and he had additional time to rethink what he would present in his Matrix exhibition. And therefore, he went for this really ambitious piece, and we're so thrilled. It looks incredible, which you will see shortly on his slides. Todd Gray was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, where he still lives, but he also maintains a home and studio in Ghana, Africa. There's not enough time to go over Todd's many accomplishments. So in brief, Todd earned his BFA and MFA at CalArts. He received a Guggenheim Fellowship in 2018 and a Rockefeller Foundation Bellagio residency in Northern Italy in 2016, which is where he first conceived this work. Todd's artwork and performance work have been included in numerous solo and group exhibitions at public institutions, including the Studio Museum in Harlem, the 2019 Whitney Biennial, a major solo show at the Pomona College Museum of Art with a magnificent catalog that's going to be in our museum shop. So I hope you'll take a look at that when you come to the museum. And he's also been shown at the National Portrait Gallery in London, as well as the Grand Palais in Paris. I'm thrilled to tell you that the Wadsworth has acquired a work from the exhibition for the collection. It's titled Cosmic Journey 1619, and I'm sure Todd will talk about it for us today. Finally, I'd like to thank our Matrix funders, the ever supportive Contemporary Coalition, and I see many of you here today, the Howard Fromson Exhibition Fund, and the Larson Fund for Photography. And without further delay, please put any questions you might have for Todd in the chat, and I welcome Todd Gray.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, thank you, thank you. A pleasure to be here. And it's been just wonderful working with you over the past year in preparation of this exhibition. And it's been wonderful working with the whole Wadsworth team. So I want to thank them. I want to also thank David Lewis Gallery in New York and the team there that's coordinated with you all. It's just been a wonderful, a wonderful, bumpy year-long journey. Bumpy as we all know what the bumps are, so we won't have to go into that. But I want to jump right on into the work, and this will be my first virtual museum walkthrough. I'm so used to giving walkthroughs in real time, but here we go. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we are at Matrix, and I want to say it's so wonderful and thrilling to be included in the Matrix program. So many of my past instructors, art instructors, have participated in it. It's just phenomenal, and so many artists that I respect. So it's really special for me to be part of this. And let's see, I originally, a year ago, I was not going to do such a huge work. But what happened was time and just thinking about James Rosenquist and stumbling on, or not stumbling, but revisiting his F-111 huge work, and just the possibility of doing something immersive, something completely immersive. And that really helped me formulate my thinking about this work. So as Patty said, the history of my work has always, not has always, but over several years, has examined systems of power, African diaspora, colonization, mental colonialism, which is basically where an individual takes on the narrative of power that they are less than. They are less than, and they are not as culturally refined, as sophisticated, as intelligent as the colonizers, or as the Westerners, as the Europeans and so forth. So that whole state is that mental state, and this whole idea that your mind has been propagandized is called mental colonialism. And if you want to find out more, there's an author named Frantz Fanon, and you might want to read Wretched of the Earth, or or Google it. So in any event, let's get into the sumptuous memories of plundering kings. So it's a 30-foot work, and it's so large that it couldn't get a full straight ahead view in the space, but I've got one from my earlier iteration when I built it in the studio. I think of this work, you know what, I think I'm gonna have to go into sections of it because it will be more relevant and you'll be able to get more from it. Actually, I'm gonna start my timer. Hold on, because I can go on. Start, great. Let's see. I want to go into the details of it. So the first section. The first section is really comes as an outcome of a conversation I had years ago. Well, actually, it was at the Rockefeller residency with an academic, an African academic named Francis Neminjo. He is a professor of cultural anthropology at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And he was, you know, another fellow at the residency in Italy. And we would have these conversations. And he said to me, he was perplexed because here he is in Africa teaching African students about epistemologies, about knowledge, all sorts of things, but he can only cite Western examples. And he says, wait, we do have a history of thinking and so forth in Africa, yet he's not, it's not in the curriculum, it's not supported. So he said to me, it's quite, he said, what is the difference between one culture that believes a man can walk on water, turn water into wine, can feed multitudes with one fish and a loaf of bread. And this is believed as true, and it's a religious, and it's also a sign of their cultural sophistication. Whereas in West African culture, in Igbo culture, you might have a lion that can talk, a tree that can turn into a bird. You have all these things that happen in the bush, but we Africans are regarded as barbaric, as unsophisticated, and it's a sign of our lack of cultural sophistication and so forth. But he goes, but I don't see, he says, I don't see the difference of these two paradigms. So I was in Finland and I saw this winged figure, this angel. And so I decided to upend it, turn it upside down in this photograph, and place it next to what's called an Ao, which is a divinity in particular to Lagos culture, indigenous culture, Lagos, Nigeria. And so here you have these two sort of mythical figures next to each other, but I positioned the African figure in the oval frame with the right side up and not upside down. Because I'm talking about chaos and so forth. And then next to that figure is a scene from a lagoon in Nigeria. Let me move this over a little bit. Then as you move, and I've got to emphasize, this piece requires the viewer to walk back and forth closer to get more details, and then step back. And so it really requires a lot of participation on the viewer. And sort of this narrative starts unfolding as you walk. Whoops. You'll see also a maze-like image where there's green. You know what, it's going to be too difficult to show with this cursor. All right, I can't even see my cursor. In any event, you'll see in the background an image of the cosmos. I frequently use images of the cosmos as ways to talk about a couple of things. One is the immensity of the universe, just immensity of it. And so that we might think of our own hubris, or the idea that we are so unique I want to sort of knock us down a couple pegs so that we see our insignificance in relationship to the cosmos, in relationship to the infinite. But I also use images of the cosmos to sort of talk about the endless possibilities, that's boundless. Things are boundless. And so it's always good for me, because when I think of being in a system, a social position as I am as a man of color, and what the constraints as being not part of the dominant culture, but being part of the minority culture, it's always helped me to dream. It's always helped me to really imagine past what I can see. And so this image of the cosmos is a signifier of that. Now you'll see layered on top of that picture is an image of a palm tree that's very colorful. And that is a result of what's called a glitch. I had a corrupt camera chip in my digital camera when I took this photograph in 2007. And it rendered it just like this, divided up in this kind of matrix, divided up in this design. And also with these really hyper colors. You'll also see a statue that was from Porto, Lisbon. As I visited many cities in Europe and took photographs in various parks, gardens, cultural institutions, as a way to combine this idea of Western power, Western hegemony. Hegemony is an all-encompassing power. It's a power that you could say is suffocating. Let me give you a little example of hegemony. If you ask a fish swimming in the ocean, what is water? The fish might go, what is water? Never even thought of water. Well, that's hegemony. Hegemony is so pervasive, it can actually, it has the power of life and death, and it's so pervasive, you don't even see it because you're completely enveloped in it. Well, I see media as being one aspect of hegemonic power. And photography is a way that we think and we get ideas and we tailor our behavior, we form our opinions it has an immense amount of power on us. And so I like to use photography to raise questions. And that's why I have frames of image covering frames of other images, so that the viewer will think, wait a second, what's behind that? What's being omitted? Frequently, we think of the photograph as being a very high analog order of information or data, where we can actually extract a lot of scientific, empirical data. But really, the photograph is only showing you this much in this rectangle. There's so much information outside of that rectangle that you're not seeing. And so hence, the way photographs operate are very fluid, and they're really not fixed in meaning. They're what I call a floating signifier. And they are altered by the meaning is altered by text or what is next to it. And so I'm using that idea to put this whole work together, different photographs next to other photographs, so that we may rethink what we're seeing. How does this change? Let me go back here. Like, you see this oil painting that I saw at a museum in Amsterdam, and this was the first time I had seen a Black subject as painted with respect as a noble person. I'd seen oil paintings before, but all the Black subjects were were servers, subservient, blackamoors, but they were never people whose identity rested on their own self and this sort of respected persona. And so I took a photograph of that, and I put it next to a person studying in this was in Lagos, Nigeria. And so I just thought that was quite shifts in time. You'll see in my work, there's lots of what I call temporal shifts, where I'm evoking contemporary moment or the ancient past or cosmos, the future. And then next to that, of course, is this image of a nature scene. Again, this one's from Nigeria. And then an image from of topiary that's on its side, a ship that I photographed in another museum in the Netherlands, and I believe that was in Amsterdam. It may not be, it's not a slave ship, but the way it operates in my system of semiotics is that it is signing for a slave ship. And then I put it off kilter so it could really move. It could, when you come to the end of the piece, it's kind of suggesting that you move back into it. And it's such a technology, the technology of navigation is what brought my forefathers and forebears to this country. So that's in the work as well. And then of course there is a scene from Ghana where I maintain a studio. I have been for the last 15 years. And it's a photograph, what it looks like a banana tree or something. So that is, hold on, let me get, and there's a view again of everything. But it's about 7.5, 8 feet high, 30 feet wide. And I'm hoping that when viewers go through it, they will be transported. Yeah, I'll leave that there and we'll go to the next piece. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions towards the end, but if there's something that you can't hold back, I believe there might be a text box. I'm not quite sure, but there certainly will be a Q&A available for the end. Hey, yes. Patty, anything that you wanted to add from the last, or shall we keep?
Would you talk a little bit about the title? I think the title is a nice addition. The Sumptuous Memory of Plundering Kings. It's very poetic and loaded.
and I only wish I authored that title. That was a line that I read in a book by Saidiya Hartman, and it was called Mother, oh God, Mother.
Lose Your Mother.
Sorry?
Is it Lose Your Mother?
Yes, Lose Your Mother, which was a book essay where Saidiya went back to Ghana and she wanted to find the complacency of Africans in the slave trade. You know, she was really curious. Well, you know, it took a lot of Africans also to organize the export of so many African subjects and African bodies. And so she went several years ago to Ghana, and that was part of her research to find out how were the Africans complicit? How did they aid in the export of African bodies? And I just thought that was such a brilliant title. That line stuck with me when I read it. And then after this piece was done, I thought, oh, sumptuous memories of plundering kings. It has a richness and a horror to it, too, the plundering. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So this work is called Though the Ship is Sinking, Trade Winds Still Blow. Though the ship is sinking, trade winds still blow. And this piece is on the floor and it leans back onto the wall. This comes part of my idea, which is always to question photography. How is photography presented? What is the normative construct of a successful photograph? I was taught, you know, in the really classic F64 manner of history of photography. I mean, I worshipped at the feet of Ansel Adams, Edward Weston, when I was much younger. Haha. But however, I've operated an 8x10 camera. I mean, I'm a full-on photographer, but I'm also a conceptual artist and so forth. And so when I'm presenting these photographs, I'm thinking, how can I challenge the canon of photography? How can I actually re-examine the assumptions that come with photography, the presentation of photography, and then call that into question? And I do that also because my history as a man of color in presenting work is when I present work in the structure that I've been trained to execute, which I'll just call good taste, following the rules. As I was when I got out of school in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, I found it very difficult to exhibit. And I found that when I broke the rules and disrupted those rules, then I got noticed. I found my colleagues from majority culture were getting exhibited by following the rules, but I was not. And I was raised in a household that said, hey, if you're a man of color, a person of color, you've got to offer the system, the economic system, the cultural system, something that is solely unique and they can go nowhere else to acquire, because otherwise they will. This will be acquired by someone who is fluent and is part of majority culture. So part of my ongoing research is to raise a question, to put a circle, put an oval within a photograph, on the side of a photograph, to really challenge these things called normative thinking, or what we assume to be normal and correct, because there's just an infinite amount of ways to execute something. So back to this image. On the right, you'll see a photograph of two men on a beach, and that's in the front of our studio, which also we operate as an artist residency. In any event, it's the man is tossing up a percussive instrument, a little that's used in Ghana, and he's on his cell phone. And you can see he's a prosperous man. He's got, look how round his body is and so forth. And right behind him is the Atlantic Ocean. So, and then next to him is a young person who is basically a worker whose labor is exploited. And his pants are threadbare, his body is very lean. And to me, it's this relationship of capitalism, of exploiting a body. I mean, you know, slavery is a, you know, it's economics. And so though the ship is sinking, capitalism, what are we in? We're late stage capitalism. Though the ship is sinking, trade winds still blow. You know, that I'm trying to say this whole system of taking advantage of economic exploitation still goes on. And that's what I'm thinking about. And here we have in the oval frame an oil painting by Velázquez. And this is Velázquez's assistant. Well, actually, Velázquez's assistant was enslaved by Velázquez. And he painted and enslaved in Velázquez's studio for 20 years until finally he won his freedom. And he went on to be a painter on his own accord. But that was quite an important story that I wanted to weave in to this collage. And then just behind that, on this vertical axis is a ruin from a place called the Green Turtle, which is in Ghana, and it's right down the beach from my wife and myself's home and studio. And I like the fusion of this faux African architecture with the stripes and the little triangular embellishments of design that you'll see. Again, with this sort of round, with this other material that's cement. And to me, it sort of like talks about, again, two methods of architecture that comes from two cultural systems. In any event, I wanted to upend it all. And so hence have it in the same relationship as it would be to a person's body. This work has to be seen in person. I mean, you have to really appreciate the scale and some of the ideas that I am engaging with requires your physical body to be present. Yeah. Oh, and then you might be wondering, what is that round object covering the second individual on the right? It's I think it's some kind of navigational device or 17th or 18th century calendar or something. I saw it when I was at The Hague, and in this garden there, and I took a photograph of it. But for me, the way it signs for the past and navigation, and because, you know, you look out just on the other side of that ocean are the Americas, where the end of the Atlantic crossing, Okay. Here's a piece. Oh, I didn't tell you, the previous piece is about 13 feet wide, and this piece is about 12 feet wide. And I believe this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Patricia, this is Present History 1619?
That is correct, Todd.
Oh, good. It's still working, even with the pandemic. It's still working. So this is a work that I conceived of last year before the exhibition, but I thought it was really appropriate to put in. It hasn't been seen on the West Coast. It was done at my exhibition, Euclidean Grigri, at Pomona College Museum of Art. And this was the first large piece I'd ever made. And it was a stunner. For me, I was stunned. And that's why I embraced this new scale as a result of what occurred to me when I made a piece of this scale and size, and how it responded to your body, how the mass of it, the presence of it, how it engages with architecture was really important. And you'll see now I have a repeated image. I have another glitch photograph, or a couple of glitch photographs from when that corrupted computer chip in 2007 rendered these odd colors, these very vivid colors. And I have an image of the, again, what was upside down in sumptuous memories is now right side up, the oval portrait of this graffitied sculpture. Someone in the most wonderful gesture graffitied these blue tears coming down. And I just thought it was quite good. And that was in Porto, Portugal, in a square, a park square that I saw. Then to the right of that is a tiled image of a ship, and that was on an aqueduct that runs through the National Palace in Lisbon, Portugal. And goodness knows, it was probably at least 300 years old. And below that is a detail of a garden at Regent's Park in London. So still taking images from the West, images from imperial centers that profited and enriched themselves from colonization, from the movement of bodies, enslaved bodies from Africa. And then, of course, placing this in relationship to images from my archive from Ghana. And I want to say again, all the photos that you see that I use are from my own archive. I've taken them, except of course, the Hubble spacecraft. But we are, you know, it came out of my taxes from NASA, so. Okay, here's another wall, and these are the final two pieces. The scale is not as large as the other ones. The image this one, I'd say it's about maybe 40 inches high, something like that, maybe 50 inches high.
40 inches. 44 by 47.
Oh, wow. It's so fantastic having the curator on the call. You can just, boom, get that correct info. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4 images. The lower at the bottom image of the portrait is a child. He's the son of the electrician in Ghana who was working on our place, and I took his portrait. The very top image is the scale of justice, an image of the scales of justice at the Lagos court building in Lagos, Nigeria. So I took that photograph from the side of the building. Underneath that are shark's fins. That was a art installation at a palace in Portugal. And I like the way the scales of justice, those two items sort of talk to the two shark's fins. And, you know, so, you know, fair game is the title. Fair game. Keep your head to the sky, in parentheses after fair game. It's that title because fair game, obviously the game is not fair, but keep your head to the sky. That was a tune I listened to often by Earth, Wind, and Fire, just to lift my spirit and to go, hey, you know, just keep your head up, keep your head to the sky. You know, it's a lot of challenges out there, but you've got to cultivate your own system of care and keep cultivating and growing your humanity. You know, just keep your head to the sky. So yeah, it's quite hopeful. I love this one. And if you go, not if, those of you that visit, there's a treat. If you look towards the side of the image, more of that child's face will be revealed. So it's a nice piece. It reveals, because there's like about a 4-inch space. And so you can just go through and see, hey, what's behind? What does the rest of this person look like? And I did that because I didn't want it to be about this specific person, which is why I hid the rest of his features with the other images, and he becomes symbolic of innocence, symbolic of a Black child, symbolic of childhood. But for those who are curious, I do encourage you to look to the side, and more images are revealed, more of the images revealed to you. Mm-hmm. And finally, this is a work that I'm really happy the Wadsworth Atheneum acquired from me. It's a fantastic piece. It was made last year. And you'll see it's, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4 images. The photograph with the flowers in the vase was from the Luxembourg garden in Paris. And then of course you have that ship that was from the Lisbon Palace, that National Palace, that for me, again, it signifies a slave ship. And of course, you know, the present history, 1619, the first African to be enslaved and arrived in the States was 1619, as most of you probably know. So hence that's present history, is that history is present. I mean, history is ongoing. Got to know your history, got to know your history. Otherwise you can't shape your future. That's a whole nother, I'm about to open a door I'm not ready to go into. Here we go. Then there was the village that we built our studio in Ghana is a fishing village, and it's called Akuida. And back in 2008, there was a funeral, and I asked permission of the elders if I could attend, and I was given permission. And so these women are just coming back from the funeral site. And so it's a very solemn moment. And then you'll see in the background an image of the cosmos, and how the colors, the primary colors reflected in what they're wearing are also reflected in the image of the cosmos. And then it's quite interesting, that glitch, to me, the glitch photograph behind it with all the high key colors of the palm trees, that also is a statement about technology and how wrong technology can go. And I think part of what I do is I look at technology quite critically, because I can see that a lot of the chaos, as we advance into the future, as we advance as a sophisticated culture and more technology, there's more possibility of complete breakdown and entropy and confusion and chaos. And so that's sort of this signifier for me. I think at this point, I'm going to open it up to questions and see where we are. So hey, or any comments or questions, Patty, you might have for me.
Yeah, so I'll take these from the chat room. So someone asked if you could talk about the frames and the systems of enframing and the relationship between boundless layers and captured images.
Well, I can talk about the frames. Here's part one, the frames. I went to sales. Let me see if I can get this going. You'll see the white frame. That is from a Goodwill shop, either a Goodwill shop or a garage sale in South LA. I went and acquired frames from homes in South LA. I mean, frames that were once in homes in South LA. South LA is predominantly Black and brown community. And I also got frames when I was in South Africa. So I went to Soweto, the township of Soweto, and Johannesburg, because I wanted these frames that have lived and witnessed a domestic experience. And I like the idea of putting this frames that were in homes into the white cube. So that's something about the frames. And there's more ornate frames as well, as you'll see that gold leaf frame. I went to an estate sale in Beverly Hills and got these frames. And so that's one thing about frames, to talk about the material, the history of the frame. There's a book called by Bachelard. It's called The Poetics of Space, where he talks about the furniture in a home and how the furniture has witnessed so many things that went on in that home, that embodied in that material itself are the poetics, are the stories, the histories of that space. And so that always intrigued me, and that's why I'm using these used frames. Mm-hmm. Framing, putting things on top of frames. Yes, the frame binds the image, mm-hmm. and it also hopefully those who think critically, as I said previously, makes us think about the decisions that were made. It's really important for you to look at the work and go, wait, he decided not to show me this. This is obscured. This isn't shown. That's the whole point. So that you start a critical dialogue with the process of how I have constructed these, what I call photo sculpture, because it's not two-dimensional. I mean, there's depth to it. You need to move. Some things, like I told you before, are revealed if you move your body and turn your head. Things become more apparent. But it's a way for me to obscure, a way for me to talk, to get you to think, you, the viewer, to think more critically about photography and how it actually hides things. Oh, one thing I want to say really quickly is, look, photography happens like that. It happens in a millisecond. So here we are, we're freezing a millisecond of time so that we can observe it for however long we want to observe it. Where else can this happen? And can we not see how abstract that is? How can you take out of the flow of time, the constant flow of time, extract 1 millisecond and then go, okay, this is really objective. No, it's not objective because it's in relationship to context. What happened before? What happens after? Where is the place? And so that whole relationship of time is critical, and to question that is critical. So that's another thing I want to do, is for us to question the veracity of photography.
Great, thank you. Another question, did you take some of the photos in places like Portugal, because that was one country that was very active in the slave trade?
Hello. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Portugal, and in some of my other works, Portugal, France, the UK, Belgium, King Leopold. Oh my God, King Leopold. King Leopold responsible for the genocide of over 1 million, maybe 1 or 2 million Congolese in the late 19th, early 20th century, the rubber plantations there for the extraction of rubber. Hey, all of our wonderful industrial revolution with rubber and tires and all that stuff, a lot of dead Africans are in that history, and that's from King Leopold. So yes, absolutely, the Portugal and the slave trade were intermixed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And okay, a question. How do you come to put these images together? Do you have a concept first and then find the images to communicate that? Or does it happen?
Okay.
Is it much more organic? What's your process, I guess? Because you have
the process
pictures in your archive.
It's all of the above. It's all of the above. What you'll need to go is toddgrayla.com. And so you can see a lot of the other works I've done in my past and so forth. I was trained, I went to CalArts. I studied with John Baldessari. I studied with Doug Hubler, Alan Sekula, Mary Kelly, Catherine Lord, a whole lot, Laurie Anderson. I took a performance class with Laurie Anderson back in the 70s. Michael Kelly was in that performance class with me, with Laurie Anderson. Jim Shaw, I think, was in that class. I was at CalArts at a very rich moment, very, very, very rich moment in the 70s. And that's where a lot of my critical thinking came about, and the idea of, hold on, I'm having a moment here. I've just slipped. Patty, what was?
Oh, it's about process.
So very immersed in conceptual strategies. Mm-hmm. And then I went again from 79 to 87 to 89. And I did my graduate work there with Alan Sekula, who encouraged me to take a deep dive into my archive, which is what I'm still doing. But everything I did was conceptual, meaning I worked everything out in my head or on paper, and then I executed it. Well, I got into photography from my love of photography as a teenager. I mean, there was nothing, I was a music, I was a rock head, and I was taking lots of photos of concerts and things like that and album covers. But I loved the process of having a camera and going like that. And it was just magic. About 1990, where was I? When I became a full-time professor at Cal State Long Beach, and I was on sabbatical, and I realized I wanted to rediscover the joy of photography. And part of the joy of photography for me was just stumbling, recognizing something, and then making that photograph, as opposed to in this conceptual mode, I would interrogate myself, like, what is the symbology? Why am I taking that picture? What is the relationship to this place? I would ask myself 10 questions before I'd snap the shutter. And it was like I would vet the whole process of taking a photograph. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to work like a jazz musician. I'm going to be in the moment, and I'm going to improvise, and so I'm going to do what's called post-conceptual photography. Conceptual photography, you work it out, then you execute. For me, post-conceptual photography, you take your photographs, then once you're in the studio, after they've been done, then you let the concept reveal that you extract what's happening there. So I had no idea in 2007 that I would be using these images in 2020, 2021, as I'm doing it. I was just taking photographs because they interested me. And I was actually working on a whole other series of work, which you'll see on the website during this period, which was called something, the Shaman Series. I was working on the Shaman Series back, and Conjure Man, which was another series. So I put them together, and it was by questioning photography. It was by reading, actually. Okay, here we go. It was by reading. So much of my research is based on reading. It was by reading Stuart Hall. And Stuart Hall questions what's called normativity. Normativity are existing systems of behavior that society maintains to create order, all right? And it's also in a way of judging of what is good, what is bad, what is criminal, what is not criminal, what is normative. And Stuart Hall was saying in any dominant culture, the minority culture will be accused of being less than, so forth, and will be subject to control and definition. And so in the UK, that was Black bodies and being criminalized. And so Stuart Hall was saying in any hegemonic, any all-encompassing, powerful network, you cannot win. The power is too great. But we have power, and our power lies in our resistance. And how do you resist? You keep changing and you keep challenging what is the norm, what is normativity. And so when I looked at the history of photography, and I looked at collage, which I love, and I love, as you can certainly tell, surrealism, and you can tell I love Magritte. And I looked at all those things, and that's when I started questioning, why is a photograph flat? Why is a photograph behind glass? I know why a photograph is behind glass, to hide it from the UV and the destructive sunlight and so forth and so on. But I kept on thinking, well, why can't I remove the glass? So I removed the glass first off, and then I sprayed UV laminate to protect it. And then I started, once I removed the glass, I realized, oh, I could start layering things on top, and I could screw from behind frames and attach them. So that's part of my process. I work on the computer first. And lately, though, since the pandemic, I've just been printing out lots of small photographs and working on a table, cutting them, collage, like a regular collage artist to cut. I think collage means to cut. And so like a collage artist, and then thinking about the sizes, the frames, and so forth. I hope that it was a long answer, but I hope you were able to follow it.
No, it's good, good. Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, you would have to work that way to be able to work on that scale, because people will see when they step into the Matrix gallery that, you're really overwhelmed by these images because they are your scale and bigger. You're really enveloped or confronted by this imagery in a very physical way. So
yeah.
You'd have to work with smaller maquettes, let's say, before committing to those large scale work.
Oh, and actually, I did something on scale before I have to test out before I commit and go forward with the production of these really huge images. I work on a much smaller scale, make with smaller frames, and I put them together to see what the final product, what the final work will be, and how it impacts the decisions that I make. So yeah, I do work at scale, and I call them sketches, and I do these sketches, but they're three-dimensional objects that that help me resolve a lot of the problems. I can anticipate the problems and then make corrections before I commit myself to this very large scale, which for me also is in dialogue with architecture. So the scale shift changes things. The scale shift makes you think, wait, we think of a photograph as flat. It's not flat. We think of a photograph as a certain size. It's not that. We think of a wall containing a photograph. Well, this wall is in dialogue with that photograph. And there's a push-pull relationship, which is also why it's on the floor and leaning, you know, because there's also the possibility that it could move, you know, that it's not quite stable. But believe me, it's very, very stable. But that possibility, yeah, believe me, with the museum staff at the Wadsworth, it's ultra stable.
Yes. So Todd, we have time for one more question, and Jana thought that maybe you could speak a little bit about collage, because these are more assemblage and sculptural. So do they come out of collage in some way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because I think for me, the art of late 20th century, 21st century is collage. For me, what is hip hop? Hip hop is collage. You take part of this song, you put them on top of together. I think collage is one of the mediums that is very pertinent in our particular historical milieu, in this particular moment. It's putting things together and putting things on top of each other in relationship to each other. What is a film? Well, that is a collage, all those edits, collage. I think also with our attention span, we're going so fast. We rarely take the time. I'm not going to make such a pronouncement. I think that our cultural experience, the city, going through the city, traveling in your car, that is collage, where you look out the window and things are moving. Relationships are changed and stacked. So this medium, I feel, is very pertinent for this historical moment. And that's why I use it. I also use it because I can tell a more full story, a denser story. And I can tell a story that has many narrative lines. For me, you can go into the work from a very aesthetic, critical point in relationship to photo history. And you can look at it through that lens. You can look at it through the lens just of signifier, signified, you know, and read it that way. There's different ways in the layering of the image, and also in the ways that I have pointed to different periods of time, different periods in history, different places. It's almost, with this work, I think, is almost approaches opera, because the story is so full and it's so engrossing, you know. And that's and I think collage allows me to do that, is to tell multiple stories. That way, when the viewer goes on one day, perhaps they will be able to extract a very particular thread of meaning that is pertinent to where they are at that space-time moment. Then they come back 3 weeks, a month later. They're in a different psycho-emotional mode. They come back and they're having a different relationship. They're making different associations with different images put next to each other. And that's really collage allows me to do, is to let the viewer understand that you are making the meaning. You are putting together all of these fissions, all of these fractures, fractured images, and you are creating a mosaic that coheres and has meaning particular to you. And that's really so fantastically important to me, that we realize the power we have to make meaning, and that we just do not inherit meaning from above, from the newspapers, from the churches, from the politicians, from our parents, that we are actually the meaning makers. And there's a lot of power in making meaning, a lot of power.
That's a perfect place to end it. I hope everyone will come to the Wadsworth to see this incredible installation. And the Wadsworth is currently open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on Friday, 12 to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 5. There is another major program with Todd coming up, and let me just read that. It's a panel discussion on May 12th. So please watch for that. That one is going to be at noon. So thank you so much, Todd. This has been such a wonderful experience for me as a curator, and a really fascinating body of work. And I'm so thrilled that we brought it to the Hartford community. So thanks again.
Thank you. Likewise. And everyone, take care of yourself. Be good to everybody.
Everyone.